Welcome to today's explainer. I am absolutely thrilled to guide you through this one because, well, we're looking at something you probably have within arm's reach right this very second. It's an object so incredibly common that it's basically invisible to us. But here's the thing. It is arguably the most mass-produced mechanical device in human history. Today, we're going to explore the hidden wonder, the absolutely mind-blowing engineering, and the massive global impact of the everyday ballpoint pen. Okay, let's dive into this. Just take a second and really absorb this number. 100 billion. Since December of 1950, over 100 billion units of just one single model, the Bich Cristal, have been produced and sold all over the world. I mean, the sheer scale of that is just mind-blowing, right? But before it became this disposable global commodity that literally lives in every single junk drawer on Earth, it actually started out as a clever solution to a really frustrating problem. Section 1, the failed artist's invention. You know, behind every great innovation, there's usually just someone who was really annoyed by the status quo. And in this case, that person was Laszlo Biro. He was this fascinating Hungarian polymath who wore a ton of different hats. He'd been a medical student, a hypnotist, a racing driver, an artist, and eventually a journalist. And as a journalist working in the 1930s, he was just incredibly frustrated by fountain pens. They constantly smudged, they leaked everywhere, and they just completely ruined his work. But he noticed something interesting. He realized the ink used to print newspapers dried almost instantly without any blotting at all. The catch? That ink was way too thick to actually flow through a standard fountain pen nib. So how do you get that thick ink onto the paper? His brilliant conceptual breakthrough actually came from watching kids play. He was watching children roll marbles through puddles on the street, and he noticed how the marbles picked up the water and left this perfect, smooth, continuous track right behind them on the dry pavement. He thought, why not put a tiny metal ball at the tip of a pen? It was a total game changer. Now, the actual historical journey of getting this pen to market was, well, frantic. Biro presented his first concept back in 1931. But as Europe started to destabilize, getting this thing made became a literal matter of survival. Facing virulently anti-Semitic policies in Hungary, he fled in 1938, securing patents along the way and eventually settling down in Argentina. So the really crucial point here is that his whole invention might have just completely languished, if not for the British Royal Air Force. In 1943, the RAF actually ordered 30,000 of his pens for their air crews. And why? Because unlike fountain pens, Biro's design miraculously didn't leak at high altitudes when the cabin pressure changed. It was exactly what they needed.
Moving right along to Section 2, engineering a democratic pen.
Following the war, this specialized military tool transitioned right into the commercial market, and that sparked a huge, dramatic shift from a luxury novelty item to the everyday tool of mass literacy we all know today. But the post-war American market for these pens was honestly kind of wild. In 1945, an American businessman basically reverse-engineered Biro's design and launched the Reynolds rocket in New York. It cost a staggering $12.50. And to put that into perspective, that was wildly expensive back then. But it was a complete disaster. It leaked, it skipped, and consumer anger was so intense, it actually crashed the entire market by 1951. But then, enter French industrialist Marcel Bich. He acquired the European patent rights and decided to apply precision Swiss watchmaking machinery to the whole manufacturing process. By 1950, he launched the Bich Cristal for just half a franc. It was dirt cheap, it was flawlessly reliable, and it quite literally democratized writing forever. Now, what's really interesting about this is the hidden micro-engineering that makes this cheap little tool actually work. It all comes down to viscosity. Basically, that's just a fluid's resistance to flow. For a ballpoint pen to function, the ink needs to be exactly between 10,000 and 50,000 centipoise. That is vastly thicker than your standard fountain pen ink. This exact thickness is absolutely crucial so that the tiny little ball acts as a perfect seal. It keeps the air out so the ink doesn't dry up inside the barrel, but it still allows just the right amount of flow the second you press it to paper. And to maintain that perfect seal, well, manufacturing a ballpoint pen actually requires what is basically aerospace-level engineering. Seriously. Step 1, the tiny writing ball is made from tungsten carbide powder, which is pressed and sintered at a blistering 1400 degrees Celsius just to make it incredibly hard. Step 2, the brass socket that holds that little ball is CNC machined to a microscopic tolerance of plus or minus 0.01 millimeters. Think about how insanely tiny that is. Finally, step 3, the thick ink is injected under a vacuum to prevent even a single air bubble from ruining the flow. This intense process is what allows that little tip to function flawlessly for literally millions of rotations. Next up, Section 3, the billion-dollar ink empire. So when you take all this extreme microengineering and scale it up globally, what do you get? A massive economic powerhouse. Today, the global ballpoint pen market is valued at roughly $17.2 billion. The Asia-Pacific region completely dominates demand right now, with 39% of the global share. And this massive slice of the pie is driven largely by the huge educational sectors and these really ambitious mass literacy campaigns happening in countries like China and India, while North America and Europe pretty much make up the remaining bulk of the demand. Let's look at Section 4, China's quest for precision. There is actually a super fascinating geopolitical twist hidden inside this tiny everyday object, and it centers entirely on technological sovereignty over that microscopic pen tip. Believe it or not, up until 2016, China manufactured about 80% of the world's ballpoint pens. We're talking roughly 38 billion units a year. However, they lacked the highly advanced metallurgy needed to actually make the precision tungsten carbide ball and socket. They had to import those tiny little tips from Germany, Switzerland, and Japan. So to close this gap and achieve complete domestic manufacturing capabilities, the Chinese government ended up funding an $8.7 million research and development program. By 2017, they had successfully engineered the specific steel formulations required, which really goes to show how even the humblest little object can be a battleground for global industrial mastery. Which brings us to our final section, Section 5, the plastic pollution crisis. But, this unparalleled global manufacturing capability forces a pretty major pivot in our narrative today. We have successfully engineered the perfect, low-cost, disposable tool. But what happens to the billions of pens we just throw away? The environmental scale here is absolutely staggering. In major economies alone, an estimated 1.6 to 2.4 billion plastic pens enter the market every single year. Because they're so cheap and so incredibly accessible, they are treated as entirely disposable by almost everyone. The reality is that roughly 91% of these pens end up as unrecycled plastic waste. The big problem here is that pens are mixed material items. They contain several different types of plastics, metal components, and even toxic chemical ink residues. This combination makes them economically unviable to recycle through our conventional municipal systems. But things are definitely starting to shift. Strict regulatory frameworks, like the European Union's Single-Use Plastics Directive, are beginning to force the industry to completely rethink how these products are made and ultimately disposed of. And this brilliantly illustrates the crossroads the industry is currently facing as it frantically searches for sustainable alternatives. Traditional oil-based pens are super low cost and basically last forever. But as we saw, they leave behind unrecyclable waste. Gel-based pens, well, they're highly popular right now for their vibrant, smooth flow, but they have a much shorter shelf life and tend to smudge way more easily. And then we have emerging eco-materials, like pens made from nearly 90% recycled ocean plastic. These are a massive step forward for sustainability for sure, but they require entirely new manufacturing and collection infrastructure to actually scale up effectively. So this brings us to a final, profound question. Can the pen of the future reconcile affordable mass literacy with our planet's survival? The ballpoint pen literally brought the written word to the masses. It unlocked education and communication for billions of people around the globe. But as we move forward, the real challenge will be redesigning this perfect century-old invention so that our pursuit of knowledge doesn't come at the exact expense of our environment. The next time you grab a pen to jot down a quick note, I hope you'll look at it a little differently. Thank you so much for joining me for this explainer, and as always, keep your curiosity alive.